Welcome to the Shock Your Potential podcast with your host, Michael Sherlock. We all have potential, but sometimes we need inspiration to get us to our peak performance. Whether you are starting out in your career, ready to move up the corporate ladder, or taking the leap into entrepreneurship, Michael's guests provide powerful tools and resources to shock your potential. Shock Your Potential is a global professional development training company committed to your unique journey. Learn more about us today at shockyourpotential.com. Listen in to today's expert.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Shock Your Potential. I am, of course, your host, Michael Sherlock. That has not changed. I have not become a new human being, at least in the last 24 hours that I know of. And all month long, we are talking about a very, very important topic, which is money. And money matters and how money matters, depending on the way you look at it. And all month long, my guests have given us some really different, unique vantage points to talk about money. And today, my guest is a credit expert. And so as we get into this, this is going to be fascinating. I know we're going to have a lot of great discussion about this. And so let's talk about her. So Gerri Detweiler, look, I even practiced it before and I screwed it up. Sorry, Gerri. I do that every time.
Close enough.
She's the education director for NAV, which provides business owners with simple tools to build strong business credit and match them to financing. And boy, what a timely topic. Now get this. Now she's no stranger to being on the interview side of this equation. She's been interviewed in more than 4,000 news stories and answered over 10,000 credit questions online. Her fingers must be exhausted. And her articles have been widely syndicated. She's also the author or co-author of 5 books, including one that I think is really poignant, Finance Your Own Business, Get on the Financing Fast Track. She's hosted her own radio show, and this I can't wait to ask her about. She's testified before Congress on consumer credit legislation, so I can't even imagine what that's like. So this interview with me is going to be just a piece of cake, Gerri. Thank you so much for joining me.
You're exactly right. I was terrified.
I bet. Well, before we get into everything, just tell me a little bit about that. What was it like to testify before Congress?
I was a nervous wreck. So I was a nervous wreck, but it was related to the legislation about credit card costs. So when I started in this field, I worked for a consumer advocacy group. And if you wanted to get your credit report, you had to pay for it. You had to take off work, go down to the credit bureau. There were no free consumer credit reports. In addition, when you applied for a credit card, you didn't find out what the interest rate was till you got the card. There was no upfront disclosure of the cost of credit cards. So that all sounds mind-blowing to us now, but if I want to blow your mind, that's the way it works in business financing right now. So in business financing, there is no requirements around business credit reports, and they've been around a long, long time. And with most business financing, California and New York have both passed some legislation, and it's in the process of being enacted. But with business financing, generally, they do not have to tell you an APR. So sometimes people will end up with financing and they'll end up paying a lot more than they realize because they don't know it. I'll give you a quick example. If you're a merchant who accepts PayPal in your business, you will get offers all the time from PayPal saying, we can give you financing. If you click through and start looking at that, the upfront information has a fee. A dollar fee. It doesn't say, here's the interest rate. You have to try to figure that out. So you have to figure out, hey, if it's 25 or 30%, maybe I'm better off with my credit card at 18%. So I feel like it's kind of coming full circle. I've been in this area a long time, but there's still lots of fun challenges. And that's what I love to do.
And, every time I get on PayPal, because that's how I pay my team, because my whole team's in Kenya. And every single time I get on, it asks me if I want to have a loan. And I've never once clicked through, but God love you for continuing to try. Well, Gerri, I know we have so much to talk about, but I want to make sure I give you a chance first to tell us more about you and your business and how you help your clients to shock their potential.
Sure. So I am currently full-time employed at NAV. NAV is sort of like Credit Karma for small business. So we're not a lender, but we're a marketplace. We're the first and only site to show business owners free business credit from Dun& Bradstreet, Experian, and Equifax, all of which have commercial credit bureaus. And then we use their data to help match them to financing. We don't sell that to lenders. You don't get calls from lenders because you have a NAV account, but instead we'll show you offers for lenders in our marketplace. And I got there because when I was writing Finance Your Own Business, my last book with small business attorney and rich dad advisor Garrett Sutton, I interviewed the CEO of NAV. And I was like, oh, this is interesting what they're doing. I kind of kept in touch. And then the book came out and I got in touch thinking they might want to sell some of my books. And instead I ended up there full time. So I have been a business owner. I did work as a business owner for over a decade with my own consulting, writing, and speaking firm. But I am right now employed with NAV, and I love working with small business owners. You know, I've been in the consumer world and small business owner, and small business owners are consumers too. So when it comes to credit, there's no shortage of things that we can do to try to help them position themselves.
Well, so many things that, I mean, I don't even know where to start because here I'll just tell you a couple of things. I started my career, well, I started as a school teacher. I taught 1 year and then they were laying off teachers all across my city. So of course, you know, if you only had 1 year of experience, you weren't doing that. But I got hired by Consumer Credit Counseling Service as their director of education. So I did that for a number of years. So just on the individual consumer side, which got me familiar with the credit bureaus and the credit reporting and, how people could actually, maintain control and get control or repair, their credit situation. So that's fantastic. Now, fast forward all these years. Now I'm a multiple small business owner. This is, I've got 2 right now, but I've had many over the course of my lifetime. And this is a business that both businesses we've financed, personally. But what was interesting is during COVID, it's the first time I ever received an SBA loan. And it's very interesting to read the documents. Now, luckily, that's a very low interest rate. And the payoff terms are great. So it's, in fact, I won't take the time to pay it all off because it's ridiculously long. But it's really interesting in this world of business finance, and especially today for so many businesses that have been struggling, that many of them need loans, whether it's to keep your doors open or to expand and scale. But you're right. I think that there's just not this information that's understandable or easily accessible enough. Frankly, every time somebody from Dun & Broad Street, whatever it is, DMB, they call me, or send me an email about making sure I have a good business credit rating. And I'm like, I don't even know where to start. I have no idea what my business credit rating is. I have no idea what that looks like because I haven't been establishing credit as the business with anybody. So I'm probably going to be, you're probably going to have to counsel me a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and that's a great background that you came from because credit counseling services are doing a lot of good, especially right now with what's going on with so many people struggling with the COVID crisis. So on the business credit side, you do have these bureaus, Dun & Bradstreet, Equifax, and Experian. And I often in my session or my webinars, when I speak, I talk about Dun & Bradstreet. I don't know if you knew this, but Abraham Lincoln worked for Dun & Bradstreet back in the day.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he was a reporter for them. So they have been around a long, long time, but there's no disclosure requirements at all. Anyone can check your business credit. They don't have to tell you. So it's not something that's on the radar of most business owners. So that is one reason why, we've helped over 1.5 million small business owners at NAV is so they can check their business credit for free. So you can do that too, Michael. No pressure. It's totally free. And then, monitor that. The one thing I am warning business owners, and I am a recent identity theft victim, so this is not unusual, but on the business side, there is a significant rise in business identity theft. So I just heard today from a business owner who said, I just saw my business's name on the list of companies that got PPP and I never applied. So they can apply for credit in the name of your business. And if you're not checking your business credit, you won't know at all. I mean, there's just how would you find out, right? So you might not find out for a couple of months. Some of the business credit cards don't report to your personal credit unless you default. So you could find out that, hey, they opened a business credit card in my name. I didn't even know this, and they've defaulted, and now, they're coming after me. So if you do
Wow.
nothing else, even if you're not in the market for finance, if you just check and monitor your business credit, then that's one step to just making sure that everything's okay. That's how I learned about my identity theft, through a credit alert. And that's how I was able to quickly act. And the same thing can happen on the business side. So just a little tip.
That's really interesting, because I never have ever thought of it. And the only reason that I've done any business or anything with Dun& Bradstreet is because I, got a DUNS number so that I could, go after government contracts.
Mhm.
And so I haven't really understood their role, what they did. I just felt like I got in there, and then they want to sell me stuff to make sure that I can improve my business credit. And I'm like, I don't even know why I'd need it. But I'd never thought of that. And my husband and I annually, every time around tax time, we check our credit reports, because it's, we just do it once a year. We check to see if there's any problems, it's just part of our process. But now I need to add one more element to what we're checking, at least annually. And should we just be checking annually, or should we be checking more?
Well, if you use something like NAV to do it, we'll send you alerts. So if something changes, we'll alert you, and then you could go in and see what's changed. So that may be just an easy way to do it. We do have a mobile app too, but that may be the easiest way to just stay on top of it. And that's what happened with me. I saw an inquiry on my personal credit from credit monitoring, and I said, hey, I did not apply for that credit card. And so that started my investigation into what was going on. They actually opened a bank account in my name, applied for unemployment, and successfully got an unemployment check deposited into my account. Now, fortunately, I had flagged the bank, so they were able to, bounce the check before this person took the money out. But there's just all kinds of scams going on right now. So if you aren't someone who normally checks this because you think, I pay my bills on time, I shouldn't have to worry about it, I would just recommend you kind of be a little bit more vigilant right now, because the scammers are out in full force.
Yeah. And I actually had another guest on this series for this month who was talking about how many fraudulent PPP loans were taken out. And, and he said something like, if America really knew the volume of the fraudulent ones, we'd be disgusted, because, those businesses that really truly need the money, some of them couldn't get it because it was already gone. And to know that it was gone to people scamming, it just infuriates me. It's just like somebody, taking unemployment claims when there are people that still are in limbo with their, their financial needs, and somebody else is getting something that could go to somebody else, but that shouldn't be going to you anyway. That there's just so many damaging components to that.
Yeah, I agree completely. And the flip side that I see, because we've done a lot of work helping borrowers understand PPP and EIDL, those programs, is that these borrowers are super anxious. So they just want this money today. And so they're stressed out because they're not getting it fast enough. On the other side, the lenders and the SBA are trying to minimize that fraud. So, I have to say, you need to take a deep breath. And I understand if your business is struggling, you need that money, but also understand that they're trying to make sure that the money goes to businesses that actually qualify, as opposed to these scammers who did get a significant amount of money in the first round. Yes.
Yeah, so frustrating. And I agree. I was actually, I was pleased. I was really surprised actually when I got the SBA loan, because, through all the grants and everything, especially at the beginning of COVID. And I know I didn't need the same amount as some other businesses. I just, I have a small team. They're, well, maybe not so small anymore, but they're, but to keep them going and keep them employed and keep, things moving with our business, it was so incredibly helpful. And it just took a weight off. And, so as you kind of get those deep breaths and say, there's times that you need it because it's survival. And now I think it's interesting to see people starting to come back and say, okay, now what can I use a small business loan, for instance, or a business loan of any kind, to start to actually scale my business. So not just survival anymore, but I'm hearing people really ready to grow again. And that's really exciting to me. And I know that, these kind of loans will make it happen. what kind of questions should people be asking? Because if it's not readily easy to see, what that loan costs you, and you read the fine print, are there other good questions that we should be asking to making sure that we're making the right decision for a loan for our business?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And in the presentations I've been giving for the past few years, like pre-COVID, I would say you want to line up financing before you need it because it could be an
Right.
opportunity or a crisis. Well, we saw the crisis, right?
Yep.
Full force. But I do really believe that as the vaccines roll out, things start to feel more safe again. We are going to see a lot of opportunity. And at a minimum, there may be other competitors in your space who, you know what, they're just done. Like they
Yeah.
don't want to be in this business anymore. And there could be an opportunity to acquire their business. And that could be
Ah,
something you could do with, say, a low rate SBA loan or other types of financing. Or it may be that they're selling equipment because they're going to close and liquidate. And so you can get a really good deal on some equipment that you need for your business, whatever it may be. There's going to be a lot of opportunity. So I hope this does sort of spur business owners to prepare. So I'll just give the three things I'd say you really want to make sure you're doing. One is most lenders do want to see a business bank account, and they're going to analyze your business revenues. Increasingly, it used to be that your bank would ask for bank statements, and they may still do that, but increasingly they'll actually ask to link to your bank statement so they can analyze the activity in your bank statement. So we saw a lot of smaller businesses during PPP and EIDL who are operating out of their personal accounts. And this is not helpful. So if you have been doing that, or if you've been commingling your business and personal expenses, that's the number one thing I want you to do right now, is to separate it and use your business, just for your business. The second thing, we saw this a lot. Now we're seeing it with the round 2 of PPP, because that launched in January when most people were not ready to file their taxes, but the tax information helps you figure out how much you get, right? So the second thing is to make sure your bookkeeping is absolutely up to date, so that it is accurate and you can produce the information that a lender may need. They may say, you know what, we need a year-to-date profit and loss statement. And if you wouldn't be able to call your accountant, or you wouldn't know how to push the buttons in your accounting software and do that, you need to be ready for that, because that could make the difference between getting the financing. And then the last thing I would say is, really be on top of your credit. There's a lot of hype right now on the internet about how you can build business credit and you don't have to worry about your personal credit. But I can tell you that traditional lenders, they're always going to check the owner's personal credit. So they can check business credit too, but they also are going to check the owner's personal credit. So I really want business owners, and Fed data backs this up, that you need to know your business and personal credit, because the combination is used about 45% of the time when applying for small business financing. So being on top of that can also be important. I've seen, Michael, people who have commented on our blog and said, well, I just got my business credit. It says I have a bankruptcy, and I've never filed for bankruptcy. My business hasn't. They've probably been mixed up with another business of a similar name that has. And so if they don't catch that, they could get declined and never know that that was the reason they didn't get the financing.
Right, absolutely. So yeah, just another reason to make sure you are looking at both credit reports, personal and business, before you start the process, because you don't want you'd rather fix something, get it taken care of, cleared up, you know, uh, and do that, walking in with a clean slate, rather than have to try and explain, even if you are in the right. That wouldn't put you in a position of power.
Right, exactly. And you want to be in the best position possible to help that lender say yes. Lenders make money by lending money. They really do want to lend money if they can, but you also have to help them analyze your business and reduce that risk. And those are three things that can definitely help in that favor.
And we are talking of all things business financing, without a doubt. And you have had some phenomenal pieces of information here. And I don't know if you have other tips, but before that, I'd like to go back a little bit, just to pick your brain a little bit more on when you testified before Congress. I know you were nervous, which I love that you shared that. But I'm imagining that once you got going and you were passionate about what you were, presenting, that, when you get in those high stressful situations like that, does your passion just come through and help you to convey your message about how important it is for, clarity, for transparency? What was your driving message in that?
That still drives me. The idea that at least we should have the information we need to make good decisions. And then we should be able to turn somewhere when there's predatory practices. So those are the two things that I think are really, really essential. And just in terms of the presentation part of it, when I started my career, I was terrified of public speaking. I mean, to the point where I would not do it. And I was forced into it. So now I've, been on radio and TV, and I've hosted a radio show, and I love it. But it's one of those things that I did not want to do, but it paid off. And so I know there are people listening who hate dealing with the money side of their business, right?
Yep.
They think that I maybe would be an accountant. I would never be an accountant. I have no interest in that type of work. Not that I don't respect people who do, but that's not what I love. What I love is education and really consumer advocacy and, helping people exercise their rights, et cetera. So I just want to emphasize that the money part is stressful and hard part for many business owners, and they struggle with it. I did when I was self-employed. You can have a great client, and then they take a long time to pay you. And in the meantime, you're struggling, you're trying to pay your bills, and you're worried about how needing them for them. It can be very stressful. I had a business partner who ripped me off for over 40 grand. I never actually found out the total. I never got a penny from him for all the work that I did on a joint project that he sold. So there's a lot of things that if you don't decide, I'm going to make this a regular part of my business, then you're probably missing out on building a more successful business. And I know you've experienced that yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as you were talking, I'm like that, you've just painted the picture of me, because I hate that part. And I struggle with it every month or 2 months or 6 months when I say, okay, it's time, I got to get it done. And finally I handed over the financials to my husband, and I said, here. And so he just actually has now of all of the remaining of everything from 2020 that still needs to, I've done my part. He's got it, he's going to help deliver it to the accountant, but that was hard. It was just as hard to hand it over as it was for me to make myself do it, because, it's hard to have somebody else look at it and maybe question, and, why are you drinking Starbucks when you're on the road versus, go into the Wawa for a coffee, so, you have that, there's a lot of emotion wrapped around it, but the more that the better decisions that you make. So, and the more you want to know things, the more informed you are, the better decisions you can make.
Yeah, I agree completely. It's really an insight into your business to be able to review those finances and then make strategic decisions about, I'm going to borrow this money at 3.75% for 30 years because it's going to help me do this. Then you're working from a point of power as opposed to a point of panic, where it's like, I'll take whatever I can get. And there's a lot of predatory lending in the small business space, where an APR of 94% is not out of the question. Yeah. There's no,
how does that even happen?
There's pretty much no limit, pretty much Congress's view. And even at the state legislative level, they've pretty much said business owners are sophisticated. They can hire advisors.
Oh, they haven't met me
they
yet.
don't have to, we don't have to protect them like we do poor consumers. Well, most businesses in America are sole proprietors. They're one person, maybe have an employee or two or a part-time employee. That's it. And they aren't sophisticated. So you have to be your own advocate in many ways. And we've enjoyed it, NAV, working on some of these things. Our CEO testified in front of the California Assembly for the bill that passed to disclose an APR in small business financing, which has been enacted. There's one in New York that just passed. So we're seeing a little bit of movement. So that's kind of cool too.
Yeah. No kidding. And it just reminds me of being in college and my first credit card in college. And, you're just not prepared for it. And the credit card companies are on site and they're like, hey, and we'll give you, a free toaster kind of thing. It wasn't a toaster. I'm not sure what I got, but I didn't understand interest rates. I didn't understand what that meant. I just knew I could go buy something that I wanted. And to this day, I was telling somebody else earlier this week that the first purchase I made with the credit card was when CD players had just come out. So my CD player that played one CD at a time, that was like a giant boombox, was $400.
Whoa.
And it took me like 2.5 years to pay that thing off, because all of a sudden I'm getting this bill going, wait, 400. Wait, I know that that's what the price tag said. but it didn't compute, because you're like, oh, I can pay it off over time. And it just frightened me. Like that moment when I realized what I had done, frightened me, and I didn't want to return it. I didn't even know that if I could have returned it. I probably should have and could have, but I was ashamed of it. And it was one of those things that started a series of thinking about money and maybe not asking all the questions that I could, because I didn't want to look like I didn't know what I was doing. And,
Mm.
finally later in life, you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So I'm going to ask every stupid question in the book, because I don't care how stupid I look. I'd rather look less stupid without a big financial mistake.
Yeah, exactly. I had the same thing with that first credit card. Don't want to remember that. But I thought I just made the minimum payment, and that's what the deal was. Didn't realize that I
Yeah.
would never pay it off. And anyway,
Yeah. Buy a $400 boombox and pay it off at $18 a month. No problem. That's fine.
right.
Until you're
Sure.
45.
26.9% interest probably, or something.
It was. Yeah, it was. Now I remember when my dad finally asked me about it, and I told him, and he's like, let me see your statement. And so I showed it to him, and he's like, well, here's your interest rate. And it was over 30%. And he's like,
Wow.
this is what is costing you. And
Mm.
I had no idea, just no concept. I mean, I understood compound interest, but I only applied that mentally to savings. I knew,
Mm.
I was growing savings. I was really good at savings, but I didn't think about the reverse with that. And, as a small business owner, sometimes you do need to have loans to build and scale. And you have to decide, to your point, before you need it, what do you need? Are you prepared? Because when you want to use it, you need to use it for the right reasons, the right way, so that you're maximizing that opportunity as well as minimizing the risk.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where being prepared and knowing what's out there for you, or someone with a credit profile like you, or a financial profile like you, is helpful, because then you're not scrambling.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, there's been a lot of scrambling over the last year plus,
Yes.
and hopefully many people will keep going. Just one other thing I wanted to touch on, because I thought it was really poignant that you brought up that, because there are a lot of businesses that have not made it out the other side for whatever reason, that does provide an opportunity, for businesses who are still growing, or maybe, need to update things, or just add to their inventory, or, buy new purchase, or, customer lists, that this is a good time to consider, how some of those misfortunes of others may be able to be turned to help your business. When people come to you, and they're trying to get in order, kind of figure out what's next for them. Are they always thinking that way, or is that something that, part of, your programs help people to recognize? Or
I think that's one thing that many business owners don't realize. Even pre-COVID, we're sitting on a tsunami of baby boomers who want to sell their businesses. There's a lot of opportunity out there. So a lot
Mhm.
of times when someone wants to start a business, they think, I'm going to start it from scratch. But
Mhm.
sometimes it makes sense to acquire a business, or as we mentioned, acquire it to add to your current business. And in that case, you might actually get better funding options, because often lenders are very hesitant to fund a brand new startup
Yeah.
business. But when they can see a business that has a track record, that's where you may get an SBA loan, or some other form of seller financing with a combination of bank or traditional financing. So don't rule that out. There's a lot of opportunity in terms of starting or growing a business right now. And we do know the stats are showing that people are trying to start businesses at record rates right now. Don't feel
Mhm.
like you have to start from scratch. There's lots of resources out there.
Yeah, that's really interesting too. I interviewed a gal for, a series called the Side Hustle Room in my, Shock Your Potential app, and she, wanted to get out. She wanted to start a business, thought about starting her own from scratch, and she ended up buying a gourmet marshmallow company, and it had been in business for like 30 years. And the owners were done. They didn't have anybody to leave it to. They wanted to sell it. And so she now knows how to make marshmallows and all kinds of other things. But she said, she goes, I remember her saying that was one of the smartest things, because when she needed that loan for it, the established longevity of that business, the positive model of that business already gave her the track record she needed to say, I'm just going to come in and learn how to make them. The system knows how to work. And
That's
so you're
awesome.
absolutely right. There's a lot of that out there that can be, somebody might not think it's your own dream, but you can make it your dream.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Gerri, we are going to have all your information in our show notes, but just in case somebody wants to look you guys up right now because they're like, I want to see how these people can help me build my business and scale my business, what's the best way for them to find you?
So you can go to nav, N-A-V as in Victor, nav.com. And if you go to nav.com and put /podcast on the end, there is a place there you can download our build business credit checklist. And you don't have to give us an email address or anything. Just download it. It'll give you the steps of building business credit. It's really not that difficult. It just takes a little bit of work. So that might be of use to some business owners who are wondering how to even start that process.
Excellent. Well, before we go, do you have any last words of wisdom or pearls of advice for my listeners and viewers?
Well, I would say, this has been a horrifically difficult, year and a half for many businesses, but I do feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And if we can hang on there, take advantage of the government options that are out there, like the EIDL, like the PPP, state and local grants that are going out to small business. And then when that pent up demand is released, I think we're going to see some really great opportunities for small business owners.
Excellent. From your lips to God's ears. Gerri, thank you so much for being a guest today. I really value your incredibly important information. So thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Shock Your Potential podcast. Learn more about us today at shockyourpotential.com, including details on Michael's 2 best-selling books. Tell me more, how to ask the right questions and get the most out of your employees, and sales mixology, why the most potent sales and customer experiences follow a recipe for success. And as always, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and like us today.